My name is Haley Shust. I'm a learning experience designer, a facilitator, and the co-owner of The Helpful Folks. I'm also a certified professional in accessibility core competencies through the International Association of Accessibility Professionals. I'm here to share an ATD Toolbox tip about creating accessible in-person events. This topic is becoming more and more important as organizations are requiring employees to return to office. Events such as training, onboarding, reboarding, upskilling, and reskilling are great ways to get teams together and to build a sense of community. However, it's vital that these events are constructed to ensure that every individual has an equitable learning experience. To break down barriers for an event, you should prioritize accessibility in the early stages of planning. In this toolbox tip, I'm going to describe 3 best practices for improving the accessibility of your in-person event. But first, let's start by defining the word accommodation. An accommodation is a form of assistance that is supplied to satisfy a need. Accommodations allow individuals to fully participate successfully with dignity. Note the emphasis on the word fully. When it comes to accessible events, everyone should be participating in the same activities without having to adjust them. By failing to do so, you may create a situation in which a participant feels left out or forgotten. Hopefully, I can provide clarity by sharing examples of conditions that require accommodations. Please know that this is not an exhaustive list. There are many permanent, temporary, and situational impairments that you may encounter when planning or facilitating an in-person event. And of course, know that many disabilities are invisible. For the sake of example, I've broken various conditions into 6 categories. Vision disabilities, which can include blindness, low vision, and color blindness. Hearing disabilities include individuals who are deaf, have hearing loss, or a hearing-based condition like tinnitus. Mobility disabilities include, but are not limited to, individuals using wheelchairs, crutches, canes, and other mobility aids. This can also include individuals with amputated appendages. Intellectual disabilities are those that limit intellectual functioning or adaptive behavior. This includes examples like ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, and autism. Medical conditions differ from intellectual disabilities in that they are chronic and require medical condition or care. This can include asthma, diabetes, gout, pregnancy, and cancer, but there are many more. If your event includes snacks or food, you may also want to accommodate for dietary preferences. This can sometimes align with medical conditions in the case of lactose or grain-free requirements. Now that we've examined some of the conditions that could require accommodations, let's explore different types of accommodations you can make. There are tons of different accommodations to consider when you're planning an in-person event. Depending on your audience, you may need one or several of them, but it's vital that you are prepared for all of them. For instance, you'll want to print copies of the slide deck before your session just in case the projector malfunctions or if a learner has a visual impairment. It's also a great idea to have a setup for live closed captions. This technology takes spoken word and transcribes it into subtitles on the projector. Typically, this is easy to do in a virtual training session, but an in-person event may require special equipment and applications. Lastly, you'll want to ensure that your room setup is easy to navigate. If you have rows of chairs, make sure there's ample space between them so that participants have personal space. If you have desks, check that they are at appropriate height for individuals in wheelchairs. Of course, determining exactly which accommodations you'll need is dependent on your audience. Before I share my 3 best practices for an accessible in-person event, I want to be explicit that an individual's disability is private information. While it's important for you to be aware as the facilitator or organizer of the event, you are not at the liberty to share this information without an individual's permission. Instead, only share the details related to the requested accommodation. So without further ado, let's jump into 3 tips for creating accessible in-person events. All three of these emphasize the planning phase rather than day of actions. It's very important that you plan ahead to ensure your event is accessible rather than having to scramble the day of. First, I suggest creating a what to expect document or web page for the event. Aptly named, this resource should detail what a participant can expect the day of an event. Include information such as the location of the event and a breakdown of the agenda, whether minute by minute or hour by hour. If possible, provide an image or a map of the venue that calls out the location of exits, restrooms, and existing accommodations, such as a lactation room or meditation room. So how does this improve accessibility? Oftentimes, accessibility barriers are created due to lack of planning and awareness. By detailing what participants can expect, they have a window into the event. And since they know their accessibility needs better than anyone, they can potentially identify barriers that could arise. And that's the perfect transition into my next tip. Always, and I mean always, create a method for participants to request accommodations. You'll want to use language like, please let us know if you need any accommodations related to a medical condition or disability. Be explicit that their responses will be confidential. You'll want to incorporate this language into several touch points. It definitely belongs on the What to Expect resource I spoke of earlier. If you are using calendar invites, you may also want to include this language there. Additionally, add to event reminders that are sent via email or text. If you're hosting a recurring in-person event, then it might be worthwhile to build an accessibility accommodations form. That way, you have a single source of truth for collecting this information, rather than one-off emails or communications. My last and final tip for creating accessible in-person events is to make sure that all relevant roles, such as keynote speakers, facilitators, and event producers, have an understanding of disability inclusion. Whether asynchronous course or in-person training, coach these individuals on the expectations. Teach them how to use people-first language. Have them practice using the accessibility features of tools such as live captions. All delivery team members should create norms for how they should run in-person sessions. For example, a practical norm would be to describe all relevant materials, such as slides or printed materials, in great detail. Remember, slide decks should only be a reference point and not the focal point. The speaker is the focal point in all training sessions. If your session is a highly interactive one, be aware that it might take some time to build rapport with your audience. Do not expect participants to engage immediately, as they might be shy or require some thinking time before they raise their hand. Plan for uncomfortable feelings, silence, and awkward moments. As needed, offer an example or personal quip to get the audience thinking and to break the ice. Generally, you'll want to avoid calling on individuals who haven't raised their hands or offered to respond. Nobody likes being put on the spot. It can create an overwhelming sense of anxiety. By building trust with your audience first and giving them plenty of time to think, you can create a more accessible, inclusive environment, and more individuals will be willing and confident in participating. In closing, please remember that in-person events require different accessibility considerations than virtual events. You'll need to build in different accommodations to satisfy a variety of needs and create an equitable learning experience. I hope that you found this ATD Toolbox tip useful. Until next time.